Just a sampling there of the reaction we've heard from Liberals in the wake of Chrystia Freeland walking away from the cabinet table, sending that caucus into chaos. Here's how Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is characterizing the situation.
Yesterday, we were reminded that if you hire clowns, you get a circus. But no one should be laughing, because there are real consequences for yesterday's chaotic Liberal clown show.
So where does this all go from here? Let's bring in our front bench. With us this evening, former Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne. She's now a professor at the University of Toronto's Victoria College. Former Alberta Cabinet Minister Gary Mar is with us. He's now the president and CEO of the Canada West Foundation. And former Manitoba Premier and Canadian Ambassador to the U.S., Gary Doer, is here. He's now a senior business advisor at Dentons. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the program. It's great to have you here tonight. Kathleen, I'll start with you. I'm actually going to pick up on that question we had in the introduction, which is very simple. Where do you think things go from here?
Well, where do I think they'll go? Where do I hope they'll go? I really hope that there are some decisions made quickly, Vassy. The thing I'm most worried about, and I'll be interested to hear what Gary Doer particularly says about this, but I'm very worried about the relationship with the United States. I think that we need some stability, and we need to know who's leading the government. And right now, I think that the disarray is very distracting. And, you know, it's interesting, Vassy, wherever one goes, this is the topic of conversation. So people are engaged, but they're engaged because they're worried.
It's such a good point. It's interesting. We had some polling from Abacus Data. Gary Doer, I'll swing over from you earlier in the show, that did show that the news yesterday really broke through to the majority of Canadians, which isn't always the case, as all four of us know when it comes to politics and things that happen on Parliament Hill. But it certainly was yesterday. We also saw, Gary, that the president, the incoming president, posted a tweet about it, essentially sort of, I think we have the tweet. We can the post on X, whatever it is, or Truth Social, his social media, essentially saying the great state of Canada is stunned as the finance minister resigns or was fired from her position by Governor Justin Trudeau. Her behavior was totally toxic and not at all conducive to making deals which are good for the very unhappy citizens of Canada. She will not be missed. How do you interpret that, and how do you interpret what is unfolding here in Ottawa against the backdrop of the tariff threat?
Well, it's when we're dealing with President-elect Trump, you're always going to deal with his ability to get stuff in the media that he wants to get in the media, whether it's taking on crooked Ted Cruz or crooked Hillary or little Marco Rubio, who he's now appointing to cabinet, or low-energy Jeb, and now it's Chrystia Freeland. I'm sure Chrystia Freeland will take it as a compliment because she was one of the chief negotiators the last time we negotiated a trade agreement. But having said that, it was a chaotic day in Canada. That word chaos has been used over and over again appropriately. And every Canadian was expecting this financial update from the federal government. There was all kinds of speculation on how high or low the deficit was going to be based on their targets. So there was a lot of anticipation for Monday, but leading up to it, there were all these leaks about Chrystia Freeland and the Prime Minister and Mark Carney. I mean, how can they approach Mark Carney now? Her job, a prominent Liberal told me his job would be to take the knife out of Chrystia Freeland's back. And it's just awful the way they treated her going into yesterday. And then, of course, that led to the chaos, because one of the most important announcements we have to make, and we made it today, the border announcement, which Canadians will like, because of its dealing with enforcement on fentanyl coming to this country and other issues coming to our country. But it just completely dominated the news yesterday, and it's dominating the news today about the status of the Prime Minister and what he did to his loyal finance minister.
So let's pick up on that point, because that is dominating everything, Gary, and Gary Mar is what I'm referencing. Do you think the Prime Minister is going to step aside?
Well, it's certainly been an interesting 48 hours. I mean, let's start by quoting Margaret Thatcher, who once famously said, a week is a very, very long time in politics, and perhaps Justin Trudeau might amend that by saying 24 hours is a long, long time in politics. So much has happened in the last 24 hours, and it starts back, going back to Friday, when strategically and tactically, the Prime Minister makes a huge mistake saying that he doesn't want Chrystia Freeland to continue as Finance Minister on the Friday before she delivers the fall economic statement. I think that was a huge tactical mistake. And now I'd say there's a comparison to, a Joe Biden moment. And you heard Ken Hardy earlier saying, that, he's got to ask himself whether he places his personal interests ahead of those of the party, and more importantly, ahead of that of the country. And so you've got an MP from British Columbia and an MP from New Brunswick saying the same thing, is that, he's really got to think through whether or not, now is the right time to step down. I mean, perhaps the best time for him to step down would have been a year ago, and every day since then has been the second best time. But if he thinks that he's the guy that can beat Pierre Poilievre, well, I'd say, okay, let's drop the gloves and let's go to an election right now. And we'll see if he's going to do that. Perhaps he'll have a walk in the snow, as his father famously did on February the 15th, and make a decision about whether he's going to put up a fight and go to an election right away. He has been underrated as a political campaigner many, many times. And I think that's, probably what's going on in his mind right now, is that he can win this. And that may be delusional, according to one of his caucus members. But that may be what is going on through Justin Trudeau's mind right now.
Well, I just wanted to ask you, Kathleen, about that, because I think, look, all of you have been in politics for a long time. The sheer volume of people in his own party who are willing to say in a public way, and I don't think they do it lightly. Like I've interviewed a number of them. They're not jumping for joy to make the kinds of statements that they are about his leadership. Like, is it perplexing to you at all that has yet to punch through to the Prime Minister and his inner circle? And do you expect it to in any discernibly different way this time around?
Yeah, I think this juncture is different in kind from what we've seen before, Vassy. I think that having someone as loyal and as important to the government as Chrystia write that letter, I am quite sure that the Prime Minister is thinking in a different way about what his future holds tonight. I just don't believe that it's just business as usual for him. I think that he knows. He's a very smart man. He knows what's going on in his caucus. He understands how upset people are outside of caucus. Whether that leads to him resigning or not, who knows? But I do think that he is thinking about this differently. I watched Question Period for a bit today, and I was looking at the faces of the members. And, it's a very bleak moment for the members of the Liberal caucus right now, because, as you say, they're not happy about this. They're not happy that they're in the situation that they're in, or that they are, many of them, having to feel they have to speak out against the Prime Minister. That's not their choice. They believe in what they've done. They've done good work for this country, and so it's a very, very hard moment for them as human beings. But I do think that the Prime Minister is thinking differently about, he must be thinking differently about his future, given what Chrystia Freeland wrote in that letter.
Do you think that's the case, Gary Doer?
I don't, actually. I think that I don't think he likes the media today and yesterday and probably not tomorrow. But I think my view is that he personally believes he's the one person that can beat Pierre Poilievre. I also think he's really interested in hosting the G7 meeting in Alberta later this year. I don't see him stepping down unless there's 95% of his caucus humiliating him in a vote. I don't see him stepping down before the G7. He may step down before the G7 and before October 15th, or after the G7 and before October 15th, and have a leadership race after the G7. But I think he wants to host that meeting, and I think it means a lot to him. And I've said before, he personally believes he's the one person that can beat Pierre Poilievre. And I don't think things have changed.
I think both you, Gary Doer and Gary Mar, have said that, and certainly the Prime Minister has conveyed that he is convinced that is the case. To your point, though, Gary, about the possibility of an earlier election, is that where, if that does end up being how it unfolds, that the Prime Minister sticks around? Jagmeet Singh seems to be intimating to some degree that maybe that would force a vote of non-confidence on the NDP's part. Is that the way that we enter into an election, do you think, next year?
Well, certainly.
So I've looked at the Liberal parties.
I'm sorry, that's for Gary Mar. My bad.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's my problem. I should have been clearer which Gary I meant.
Live TV.
I've looked at the
Gary
Liberal
Mar,
parties.
the floor is yours.
Yeah, I've looked at the Liberal Party's documents, and there's actually only one person that can decide whether he steps down as Prime Minister, and that is Justin Trudeau himself. Their documents stipulate that as long as you are a sitting Prime Minister, there's no process by which the party or the caucus can make the decision about whether you're in or out. It rests solely with Justin Trudeau. And so obviously if there's a non-confidence motion, and that could trigger an election. But to Gary's point, I think he's very keen on hosting the G7. Perhaps what he does is he prorogues Parliament for some period of time to stave off any possibilities of a non-confidence motion, and stays on to last through to the G7 in June of next year, and then steps down after that, has a leadership race. Hard to know what's going on through the Prime Minister's head, but I also believe that he has fashioned himself and convinced himself that he is the only person that can beat Pierre Poilievre in an election.
Well, we shall see. Hopefully we'll reconvene in the new year and see where everyone's predictions stand. Thanks so much for making the time for the discussion, everyone. I truly appreciate it. Kathleen Wynne. Yeah, Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to all three of you as well.
Happy holidays.
Gary Mar and Gary Doer. Thanks, everyone. We're going to be right back with more.